around getting the most eyeballs to, oh, I almost pressed leave meeting. You have to say, got it. Okay, got it. We're recording. You're always very careful. Sometimes you press the wrong button, you exit and you don't mean to, but anyways, we're ready to get started, and we're going to start with some introductions. We got a few people from our team here. I'm going to start with who I am. I'll be going through the training. Hopefully it'll be somewhat interactive because there's not that many of you. So feel free to raise your hand and ask a question whenever you have one. I'm Angie Spesic, the Vice President of Marketing and Communications. I've been with the organization for 6 years now. So I was part of the walks, when they were physical and as well when they were virtual, and super excited about getting back to somewhat normal in the years ahead. And so we're gonna do a bit of a roundtable. The Gutsy Walk team is here, of course, again. And we'll start with Naval, is in the top corner, the manager of Gutsy Walk. We have Rebecca, who is the Gutsy Walk coordinator. We have Amara, who happens to be eating dinner. She also helps support Gutsy Walk. Natasha Malik, who is the manager of marketing communications. Andy McIsaac is also part of the marketing communications team. You actually may have seen him. He's been on the TikToks and Instagrams with these wonderful videos and sharing some of his experiences. We have Josephine, who's the regional director or national director of community engagement. And then we have Lisa Milligan, who is in charge of Southwestern Ontario. And is there anyone else from the team that I missed? No. And then we have Mia, who is our national honorary co-chair from Montreal. Very happy to have you not only as a spokesperson, but helping to support media and being interested in what all that is about. And then we have a number of people, Krista, Genevieve, and Melanie. So let me see if I have this right. Krista, you're from Fraser Valley West. Genevieve from Montégie. Melanie from Kingston. And Mia from Montreal. Do I have everybody? Great. So let's get started. So what is this all about? Well, Gutsy Walk, a lot of people are aware of Gutsy Walk, but there's certainly a lot of people who aren't aware of Gutsy Walk. So media relations really kicks in terms of promoting the event. Ideally, one of the measures of success is the numbers of stories we can get, the interest we can get from local publications, and as well national publications. We did, this year we're doing a little bit extra. We've actually secured an agency, a public relations agency, who's going to help a bit in this effort, and will work with all of you to kind of get the maximum visibility. And we'll be leveraging people like Mia and Claire to help share the story and why Gutsy Walk is so important, as well as all of the local honorary chairs from across the country. And so I'm going to share a deck, but again, because it's a small group, feel free to raise your hand or just, chime in if you have a question. So bear with me for a second. I'm just going to start the official PowerPoint to go through this. So I'm assuming everybody can see this. Great. So what is it we're going to cover today? We're going to talk a little bit about how you can find these opportunities, how you make the ask, some tools and tips that will be available to you, and should you get interest, what is your next step? So why is this important? Well, it's about raising awareness for the event, but as well as the organization, and it's always an opportunity, a great moment in time to talk about the diseases, raise awareness about what Crohn's and colitis is, and why this work and what we do is so important. Obviously, it helps support the revenue generation or the participant engagement. The more people that are aware of Gutsy Walk, likely the more likely we'll hit our objectives. And this effort doesn't just happen on the day. It's leading up to the event. It happens on the day of and post-event, and building the community in general. So the role of a Gutsy Walk media captain, really to work with the staff partner in developing a plan to reach out to media locally, to engage them around Gutsy Walk, and to develop and tailor some of the materials so they're locally relevant, with guidance and support from your staff partner. And along the way, you may find that there's some interest to do some in-kind support, whether that might be running free ads or getting some stories out there. Those are always great to bring forward as well. So types of media. So there's online, print, radio, television, and what we call out of home. Those could be banners, signs, digital, like out of home in a lot of cases now is digital. And what we're trying to do is get in the places that the community could potentially hear and see or experience Gutsy Walk. And so radio is, people are in their car. That's a great place to hear about the event. Television, the stations that people listen to locally, and to get stories in there, or at least get in the community listing associated with some of the local channels, print and online as well. So what is this about? What is the work effort about? Well, one of it is just building your media list. You may want to check with your staff partner to see if a media list for the community already exists, because this isn't the first year we've done that, very likely. There's an Excel spreadsheet with some of the media and the contacts there. It's about completing the forms for the community calendars. So many papers, many stations. You can submit your community event and get it on, like an example would be CP24 has a ticker on their news, and they list dates and events. And it's all about, filling the form and making sure that you get it in there on time, and then pitching the reporters with the story ideas. Typically, a good way to engage is around the local honorary chair and their individual story and key spokespeople within the community. So you'd want to know who they are to be able to profile, because it really is the stories in many cases that will attract a journalist. So the best practices in creating your media list, again, this list might already exist, so it's a matter of refreshing it for this year, but it's a bit of digging. So very likely, some of the papers or stations that are in your community. For example, I live in Oakville, Ontario. I get the Oakville Beaver. There's Inside Halton is another paper. In Mississauga, there's a number of papers. So the first thing I would do is go and look on their website, or I would look at the paper when it comes. It comes here every Wednesday, and look for their contact us area. And they may even spell out and say, if you have a community event, here's where you submit it. You may also find the names of some of the journalists associated with that paper, and that would be the name that would go onto this list that you're now building. So I would put Oakville Beaver, and I'd put that contact name there. I might start thinking a little bit about or researching that journalist to see if they've covered any types of stories or has any particular interest, to build a strategy around engaging with them. And then, of course, if you have existing relationships, or someone who's connected to any kind of media outlet, that's a good way of getting your foot in the door, is to have someone make the introduction for you. So I went through a little bit about this, but there's different types of reporters depending on how big the newspaper is, but sometimes there might be a health reporter. It's about finding out those that are interested in community events, health or lifestyle reporting, and getting their names, finding out who does the assignment, is at the assignment desk of a news outlet. There is a local station here, it's CHCH, and they do a lot of community programming. And so I would likely just reach out to CHCH and see if they're interested in covering the story, and tap into some of the individuals that I see every day on the news desk. But again, it's just looking for those opportunities. It's a bit of homework in terms of just looking out and seeing the kinds of things that are around you in your area, in the community, your walk community, to see the things that touch your community, newspaper, local programming, out of home, and building a bit of a strategy around that. So here again, some tips on, things to think about. If you can't find names, most publications and outlets have a general contact us information email, which you could use to kind of get your foot in the door. Here's another example. This came from the St. Catharines Standard, which I just pulled out. It was on one of their links online, and it said, if you have a tip or photos to consider, there are multiple ways to, for registered and non-registered users. They have the email address there, and that's definitely something that I would put on my list if that was my area. Here's my example again of the Oakville Beaver, which is also connected to Metroland Media, which actually connects many communities. They actually manage a lot of the local publications. So sometimes might make sense to kind of look at it collectively or individually. If you have many areas, I don't know if some of the captains cover multiple areas, but you might want to consider if any of your locations are connected by, a similar publisher, because that might help. They might actually help you get into some of the other publications. Community calendars are also important to, like in your research, to look for. And this is just about getting the event published on the calendar, the date, the name, the why walk, and how to register. And here's another example of a way, if going to the site to find that particular way of engaging and updating the community calendar. Also, look back in the last year or two. Those that have covered the event in the past are more than likely to cover it again. So they're good people to re-engage in the media strategy. You could also look at other events in your area to see what kind of coverage and who covered them, to also use that at those contacts as leads. So in short, it comes down to doing your homework, doing a bit of research, looking at the past, leveraging relationships, doing a bit of digging in terms of the publications and the outlets that are within your area, and putting that together in your Excel spreadsheet. So I'm just going to pause there and see if there's any questions. One of the tools that you will have is a standard community listing overview. So in a week, there'll be a toolkit available. So what that will have is you won't have to make up the description of Gutsy Walk. It will actually say, here's, the overview for Gutsy Walk, and you can just fill that into the form. There will be some pitching templates, so you can use those in your introduction to the journalists or to the media outlet. So a lot of these tools will help you in your outreach so that you don't have to create them on your own. So what is a pitch? Basically, it's like fishing. It's the ask. It's you're presenting the journalist with a reason to be interested in the story. And so again, there will be a template around this. Some of it you'll have to customize, but ways to get an outlet interested in your story could be profiling the local honorary chair, could be profiling a bit of the statistics that are associated with the impact in your area. There's just lots of different ways to get interest. Most often a journalist will be attracted to the stories, the individual stories of people associated with the walk and why they're walking. More than likely, many people in the community don't really know that much about Gutsy Walk, so it's an opportunity to educate around Gutsy Walk, as well as Crohn's and colitis and what the diseases are and the impact of those diseases and why the walk is so important. Here's some coverage in the past. A lot of coverage nowadays is online. And the great thing about that is that we can reshare it through all of our social outlets and get even more eyes on these stories. And when you do get a story, be sure to let your staff partner know about these opportunities before and when they're actually published. Before, because we can help in some of the preparation, especially if it is a larger outlet. We might even set up an individual kind of prep for the interview. Interviews take forms in different ways. So sometimes you have to be aware of the comfort level of the spokespeople or the individuals in your area. Who's comfortable doing a television interview? Not everybody is. Who's comfortable potentially doing a radio interview? What spokespeople can, do we have that can speak in French, in English, potentially bilingually, in those outlets where the journalists might be, in French or in English. Online is a little easier because many times the interview will take place over phone. Sometimes the exchange is by email, and it's you're not in front of a camera, so it's easier. Interviews these days, although I don't know what will change leading up to Gutsy Walk, but many of them take place now through Zoom, where traditionally it would be a camera crew coming to your location and actually interviewing you in the traditional form. Now many of them are taking place through Zoom. Sometimes they're live, and sometimes they're done in a studio and then edited to run later in the day or in the week. Journalists like to do things, especially if it's a timely interview, they like to do it in the morning because they want to get ready for the evening broadcast. So what to include in your pitch? And again, these tips and tools will all be available in the toolkit. But basically, you're introducing who Crohn's and Colitis Canada is. You're providing high-level details about the event, the purpose of Gutsy Walk, and what the funds raised help to support, the importance of the event and the impact on the community, and then an opportunity to interview someone who's eager to share their story. Part of the preparation too will be capturing the individuals within the community who are there to kind of engage in those opportunities. Sometimes they come up with little notice. So it could be a journalist who says, and this is not unusual, can I interview someone today? And so it's getting a sense of who's available, their comfort, and also their availability and having some backup plans. Because once those opportunities come up, you really do want to leverage them. and attach the media advisory, which includes a lot of the key information about the event. Always tailor the email to the reporter to make it a little bit more personal versus looking like a form outreach. You might pick up on if they've covered something in the past, and how the story and connect maybe how the story aligns with their interests. Using the stats around the event, and those again will be available in the toolkit, and emphasizing how the story will be of interest to their community, because of course their shared interest is getting reshares on the story, making sure that the online story sees as many people see it. They want to get eyes on their story, and so by showing how much interest and how popular Gutsy Walk is, they're likely to be attracted to it because they love community stories. If you haven't heard back, it's okay to kind of knock on their door, not literally, but send them an email reminder, call them, just to keep top of mind. Sometimes it's all about timing. There might be stories in the community, COVID or this or that have taken precedence, but there might be a slower day where this story fits right in with what they want to do, and all of a sudden there's a bite. So yeah, just sometimes it's just about being there at the right time. So the toolkit, which will be available at the middle of this month, which is not that far away, will include key messages, a pitching template, an advisory template, the information for the community calendar, key information about Gutsy Walk, about the organization, and about the diseases. The media advisory is really just a one-pager with key information around the Gutsy Walk. It covers the why, the what, when, where, who, and highlights certain information that they would like to know. So if you have interest, so all of a sudden somebody calls you and they're interested in getting an interview going, first thing to do is update your staff partner. All media opportunities should be sent in to media at Crohn's and Colitis Canada. That really goes to Andy and myself. It is a typical way too that media will engage our organization. So many cases when a journalist wants to get a story going, they write to this email address. And typically that activates Andy or I to kind of reach out to a number of people and kind of figure out who is the best person to respond and who's available to get involved with this interview. High profile interviews. What is a high profile interview? It might be someone on like a national television show, a larger news outlet. Likely there's a benefit to having a prep session in advance just to kind of go through the key messages and the comfort around speaking to this journalist. So certainly we're available to set that up. And that may in fact be something that the agency that we've engaged will participate in. They're also going to be looking for places to get stories in. So we'll be working all together to get as many stories as we can published for Gutsy Walk. So they may actually be the ones who find an opportunity for an interview and flag it. And we may have to engage locally to kind of get the right person who can speak with the journalist. And again, likely that might be Mia, or Claire as national co-chairs, but it could also be the local honorary chair participating, or someone in the community who is already comfortable speaking about Gutsy Walk. I was just looking at a message that flipped up and it said, participants can see your application. I'm assuming it's my PowerPoint. So tips for the interview, showing the world how amazing you are, how to present yourself. Well, this is assuming you're on Zoom or you are being interviewed, in person. But ideally, you have your Gutsy Walk t-shirt and you're wearing your t-shirt. Ideally, it's this year's t-shirt, and hopefully everyone will be getting that soon. Although it says avoid wearing solid red, but the exception is the Gutsy Walk t-shirt, of course. But you don't really want to wear stripes or heavy patterns. They don't do well on TV. Green and white aren't the best colors. Make sure you're really prepped and focused. So you might want to schedule time ahead of the interview to be just to prepare yourself mentally for the interview and to just maybe rehearse or go over the points again. If your interview is on Zoom, look at the camera rather than the screen. That's always a good thing, although if you're reading, it's a little hard. Avoid reading if you can. So this is really about knowing the content and being really comfortable with it, and just smile and breathe and be comfortable. I mean, it's hard if you think about it too much. You kind of just need to approach it very casually, and enthusiasm is contagious. So be, enthusiastic. People love that. Like they're going to think, wow, I want to be at Gutsy Walk because she's there or he's there. And yeah. So what questions might a reporter ask? Well, typically they ask, what is Gutsy Walk? What is it about? Where does the money go? How are you connected? And they're going to ask about the disease and what it means to live with the disease. You could probably go and see some past interviews and just see the nature of those interviews, because they are many times very consistent. And then, of course, how can someone get involved with Gutsy Walk, and how many people are affected by these diseases? You might want to have those numbers locally, be aware of the programs. If people need support, there are always good things to kind of reference, whether it's camp, the scholarship, the education, the resources, the website, etc. Sometimes in interviews, they also ask, do we have some assets to share? So this is always good to, send in the poster. It could be, there's things called B-roll or photos. B-roll or photos, they're kind of images that they would use in their broadcasts, and it helps bring to life the interview. So they might cut to a past Gutsy Walk or some photos of some of the local walks. And so we have some of those, but you might want to pull together some of the pictures from the local archives and ask your staff partner to help find some of the photos that could be used within that print publication or the TV broadcast. The power of a press release. Press releases used to be a lot more powerful. They get a lot of impressions because they automatically get picked up when you put them on the wire. So you typically get like hundreds of thousands of impressions, but a lot of them are automated. The real value, though, comes in it converting to a story where there's an actual interview involved, because that brings it to life versus just running your press release. But it doesn't hurt. So, it really just talks about the event, and might have some quotes in it, things like that. Typically, we will issue a press release shortly after Gutsy Walk to showcase the impact overall, and talk about how many people got involved, how many people were connected with the walk, how much it raised this year, and things like that. So we will do one on the wire, and so that's not something you need to think about. But if you wanted to have a local release, you could, but it's just something to think about. I don't think it's the main part of the media strategy. I certainly think that reaching out to local journalists personally is a much better strategy than issuing a press release, which is less personal. The community calendar, we talked a little bit about that, but basically it's looking for the links and the places to submit the event information so that you can get published in their community calendar. And here's an example of that. This happens to be in Halton. Here's another example, now Toronto. It's just some of them, all the forms look different. They're not all the same. And again, you'll have access to the information to populate this, so you don't necessarily have to create it. But what you need to do is obviously know the name of the park. You know, if there's any unique information for the event locally, then that's what you would want to put in, and so on. Here's one for Global BC event calendar. Another one. The other asset that we're creating is a radio ad, and they'll be available later in April in English and in French. We have a 10-second and a 30-second in both languages. And this is when you come across the opportunity to get free placement on the local radio station. In some cases, there may be a sponsorship involved. In that case, sometimes they record their own radio publicity associated with that sponsorship. But in other cases, they may say, do you have a radio ad already created that they will run for us? And in that case, you have access to this and can use it there. We also have our print ads created, as well as digital ads created. And here's just some examples of them. Again, in some of these publications, they may actually have the opportunity, they might have free space. Sometimes they have a spot in their newspaper and an opportunity to run an ad for, you know, the event. And we could certainly customize it with the location, like to make it local, if that's the case. So you may want to explore whether or not that opportunity exists within your local paper. And here's a copy of the digital ad. And so in closing, it's really just making some of the connections locally, seeing what those opportunities are, making sure you're taking advantage of any free placement that you can with the community listings, and just making sure that we get as much awareness as we can, as many people kind of excited, because it's all about the build leading up to the event. And there's also an opportunity when you think of your outreach to actually invite media or influencers to the Gutsy Walk, the local Gutsy Walk, to have them there during the day to cover the story, or to, you know, on the social media front, they could be influencers who are going to, you know, take pictures and share the event with their own followers. So in the end, just a big thank you. Your role is so important because you bring to life the event locally, and you're helping to promote the event and making it really relevant to the community through the efforts that you're doing. So a big thank you to everyone. I'm going to take the PowerPoint off SlideShare so we can just spend a few minutes to see if you have any questions. Great. So I'm curious, have any of you been media captains in the past? Mel, is this your first year?
My first year at a live walk, yes. I think Sherry basically spearheads that mostly. I take part in the ask, but then she does most of the interviews because I don't actually have IBD. So we usually use the honorary chair and then Sherry to pair in the interviews. Yeah.
Yeah. She does a great job. I remember seeing many of her interviews, and
She's very comfortable and very informed, and yeah, she can help pick up if there's any, you know, comfort, you know, issues with our chairs, or maybe there's just a stumbling point, or she's very good at rescuing, so that's good too. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mia, I think you've been on some interviews so far. How does that feel? How do you get ready for an interview?
Well, I was invited on Salut Bonjour last year, and it's a big like news show every single morning. So my mom watches it every single day. So, and I think that, you know, I had no questions given by the reporter, so I had to kind of create an idea of what I was going to say during the interview, and I was kind of prepared to every single type of questions. And on the day of, it was like 3 minutes, so I had to really like speak fast and try to like, I'll put my answers really like in a short answers, so I don't take too much time. And at the end, I don't know if you're familiar with the show, but you have this kind of song at the end of the kind of the news. So if you hear the song, you're like kind of late in your question, so it's a bit stressful. But at the end, you know, you're kind of proud of doing it, and then you move on, and you're like, yay, I did it. So
oh wow, yeah, isn't it a great feeling once you finish? It is. There's a lot of nerves before obviously you start, but you feel so good once you've accomplished it. It's like getting over, you know, and everyone, I think everyone is apprehensive. They're always a bit, I don't want to say fearful, but you know, you are on pins and needles before, because you want to put your best face forward, but that's part of the process, right? And then you get ready and prepped. But you brought up a good point, is when you can ask the interviewer for their questions in advance. Sometimes they have an idea of what they're going to ask. Other cases, they just kind of wing it. But if they can send the questions in advance, I think that does help, because then you can ready form some of your answers, you know, and prepare that way. That does help. And Genevieve, is this your first year?
No, it's been my 6 years within the committee of the walking organization, and I've been the person one time before, and this year found anyone else who wanted to do this task again, so I'm on again for doing it again. And I've been on a community TV show to explain my situation, and now I lived with the disease and what is it, and it's sure that I was nervous before go. I'm a natural speaker in French.
Yeah,
I'm mostly French, so excuse my, it's not very perfect, but I manage.
Yeah, well, great. Thank you so much for doing that. And just know also our tools will be available in French, so we will have those for you. But no doubt you've done this for many years. You already know a lot about the approach and how to get ready. So that's great.
Good.
Yeah. Yes, and thank you for sharing your story. It's so powerful. I mean, it's really, it's you know, the event is something to obviously showcase, but it's really the personal stories and why this matters that really bring to life the event and the impact that the event has, and just educating everyone around Crohn's and colitis and what it means, and what it means to live with these diseases, because a lot of the community just doesn't know how it affects people day to day.
Yes.
Yeah, so thank you. Any additional questions before we close off for the night? No, everyone feels well prepared? I mean, we're here to support you, even if like, there's a question or an opportunity, we can help with that. And certainly the staff partners will help in making sure that everything runs smoothly. But, we're getting to that exciting part where we're going to start getting more interest. Andy, I think the digital advertising is starting like soon.
Yeah, we've submitted a bunch of we submitted our paid and grants to go live. So Aber and the team has them. So I'd imagine in the next week they'll be live.
Yeah. So it kind of builds, once all of these things start to be seen, more like media is going to start to be more interested in covering the story, especially going like in many cases going back to a physical walk and what that means. There's a bit of an excitement about just the fact that many of these events are changing.
Angie, I just wanted to mention something that we do in Kingston is we tackle some of those visible billboards in the area. So hotels, recreation centers, some of the local parks, like ours is in a public park. There's a one up by RMC, I think, that we use. You had to pay for those often.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can get them donated in kind. The hotels will often donate them in kind. But that's a good way to kind of capture audience that is sitting in traffic. Yeah. And there's this board that's just, the text catches your eye. Hopefully, I don't know if that's true or not, but so we do that too. Like I said, hotels will often do it in kind, and then others you might have to pay for.
Yeah, great point. It's really finding those places that get noticed. In advertising, you call it the day in a life, and sometimes it's just the routes people are driving, or it's the stations they're listening to in the morning. The things they tap into at during the day, and just getting ourselves there. So it could be putting the posters up in some of the coffee shops, wherever, or the grocery store, and just getting seen, because chances are you see it once, you don't notice it, you start to see it. Well, now you're going to see it in digital, you're going to see it everywhere. Like we actually do something on digital, we call it interest targeting. So it kind of follows you, like when you could connect to something, all of a sudden it's following you everywhere, and you're like, why is that ad always there? Well, we're going to get to a point where Gutsy Walk is always going to be there, and it's just going to kind of build, and it kind of culminates on June 5th. And hopefully that helps with some of the interviews, because the more that it's seen, the more the journalists are likely to kind of want to engage in something that they're starting to see in the community too. It does help with that effort.
And Jean, sorry, there's an echo somewhere, but do we do any stats on the website? I'm just curious. I asked Sherry about this before, in terms of, does anybody go to the Kingston website? And if they do, where do they go? Who are they? But do we do that maybe on the main site to see, is there anybody from our media partners that are, going there for information we don't know about or haven't engaged yet, to look for information that might be a nice source of, information for some of our local walks, or maybe even just at the national level, who's going in and peeking in at the messaging. Anyway, just curious.
I see Natasha's looking up stats for Gutsy Walk. So and I don't know, Natasha, if you want to share everyone with the good news that people are getting more and more interested in Gutsy Walk.
Yeah. Yeah, actually, so in terms of the website, we're really picking up steam on that. And in terms of like the location pages, so your location page on the Gutsy Walk website, we're tracking that, and we actually tracked it last year too. So it will be really cool to compare how much more engagement it gets, because you might start to notice, and we're slowly working on it, but we are adding a lot more content to the gutsywalk.ca website. So you'll probably see soon, we've got like a whole page, and we've been teasing it as well, but we've got a whole page of all the local RNA chairs, a page of the national RNA chairs. So we're building up that content. But in terms of Crohn's and colitis.ca, we do have some information, like each of your, like your chapter page, I'm on it right now. It does have like your stat about how many people in your region are living with Crohn's or colitis. So for Kingston, it says it's 1,100. That probably would have been last updated in our impact of IBD report. So those numbers come from that. The good news is I actually just got an invite today into my calendar to start planning for the next impact of IBD report. So that would be, I'm not quite sure how soon that would be coming out, probably like a year or so. But then all those regional numbers theoretically would be updated. So those new numbers are coming. And yeah, we've got some new folks in our research department. So I'll poke them for some more numbers, but we've got a couple that we've got throughout the Gutsy Walk website. And maybe what we can do in your key messages, there is also a whole bunch of facts and numbers as well too. So I'm not sure if that answers your question entirely, but yeah.
But I would add to that, what we get are IP addresses. So we're not getting, we don't know that it's a journalist that visited our page unless they fill out a form. But what happens when someone visits a page, a Gutsy Walk page, is all of a sudden they, you know, and I think cookies still exist and stuff like that. I know some of that stuff was changing, but basically they're going to now be targeted with Gutsy Walk information. And we do something like interest targeting. So people with certain types of interest are going to be targeted with Gutsy Walk ads too. And they could be just people who generally have been, you know, through Google, been clicking on certain things that make up, you know, potential of someone who could be interested in Gutsy Walk. So there's some sophisticated things that are done digitally to get content in front of someone with the potential to engage in Gutsy Walk. But we don't necessarily know unless they reach out specifically that it's so-and-so reporter from, you know, from this publication. We do, though, keep lists of people who have engaged with us, and they're definitely going to be part of our outreach in terms of, you know, Gutsy Walk promotion. So people who have engaged with us, asked for stories, asked for interview contacts, published content on us in the past. Hope that helps. Great. So any other questions? This is your team. So you've got most of the marketing team here. You've got all of the Gutsy Walk team here. You've got, you know, the development team, some of them here. We are your team, so we're here to help you. So feel free to reach out when you start on this journey. If there are questions or opportunities, watch for the toolkit, because I think that will help a lot. And, you know, and if you have any other tips, we'd love to hear them too, in terms of what's working for you and how we can make sure it's shared amongst all of the other media volunteers. So thank you so much for supporting the event. We look forward to working with you and seeing and making great stuff happen. So that's going to conclude the recording.